personal transformation is not a partial practice. It isn't simply about a new strategy, a new exercise or modality to cling to that allows you to experience a spiritual version of yourself. Because very often, that could be the dangerous game of building a spiritual alter ego to dismiss the importance of your own pain body and the wounds that you're still masking deeply within yourself, which is preventing you from actually becoming this coherent and holistically aligned version of your most powerful self. So the question then is, why is transformation so challenging? Why can't we simply become this transformed self in a manner of allowing that realignment to occur? In this video, I want to fuse together several key concepts that have to be considered throughout this personal transformation process, including quantum jumping, letting go, and actually embodying the new values that allow you to become this most integrated version of who you are. But to achieve that, we need to first understand the difference between you right now carrying certain aspects of the shadow that still unbeknownst to you might be creating the life that you feel you have outgrown and that you no longer want to be experiencing, including certain patterns that are dysfunctional and certain elements that still appeal to this version of yourself that is embodied within the shadow. Maybe you consciously know what needs to change, and maybe you recognize the need for evolution all around you. But when it comes to actually creating the reality that exists, you may not know that you even have the power to do so. Because if you're acting from the shadow, you actually lack a total sense of agency. Because that's the nature of the shadow. It is unconsciously creating these projections all around you in your life, which still feeds into your current simulation, the challenges, karmic lessons, and different situations from your past that haven't fully been integrated. And so this creates a massive conflict of interest between your present self and this future self that you really want to be experiencing, that is vital, that is experiencing peace, equilibrium, and true alignment at the level of the soul. So why can't we easily get there? Well, many of us, in choosing to create this higher version of ourselves, are still bringing the past into our future. And not just that, but we're choosing to bring in our wounded self. And our wounded self is simply that victim inside of us that still hasn't fully grappled with the lessons, programs, conditions, and painful situations that must be integrated in order to recover the power of the soul's essence that was always there to begin with. If you think about your wounded self, you might start to come back into a clear sense of feeling everything that created that wounded self, including anything from the past that felt like a painful accident, a source of trauma, misunderstanding, rejection, anything that made you feel ashamed about yourself or your authenticity. Because of that, these parts of you that are now in denial, self-rejection, and unable to really access the power of your authentic spirit may now be hijacking everything that you know needs to be done in order to align with the highest possible timeline and the highest possible version of you. This might feel like various forms of self-sabotage that creep into your reality when you know a certain decision, for instance, needs to be made, but instead of choosing to pursue that with openness, strength, resilience, and a deep sense of knowing that you should be making those decisions out of self-trust and out of a knowing that your intuition is guiding you in that particular direction, you may instead choose to deviate from that pathway because alignment in and of itself might feel dangerous to you if that wounded aspect of you is still in there trying to block alignment. It's a paradoxical thing. Why would you be afraid of alignment? Self-love, self-trust, faith, all of these things that seem to be fundamental parts of the conscious experience. And yet they aren't if we're still attached to that wounded version of ourselves. The nature of the wounded self is the nature of that internal victim, which can often take on this very dense energetic state internally that keeps you anchored to limitations, excuses, fears, and crippling inner programs that devalue your status as an autonomous being that has free will, choice, and the ability to do things based on the felt experience of being aligned with them. So you might be still doing things that aren't actually in alignment with your highest value system, with what, for instance, your higher self would want you to be choosing and doing. Because that part of you, that's the inner saboteur, that still wants you to be re experiencing the shadows of your past, is keeping you in this state of limbo, all because it creates the assumption that you must be staying safe through that feedback loop of now thinking your past is going to give rise to the same kind of a future. This, of course, is a total stereotypical illusion that your ego is projecting to keep you stuck in that holographic rendering of its reality, built on this cognitive bias that the past is going to always repeat itself. And the only reason that it does is because we choose to repeat ourselves, because we don't choose differently, because we don't believe in the power of new intentions, new choices, and in our own power of self. And so because of that, we might stay confined to what our mind is projecting as the possible outcomes in reality without even seeing everything that is accessible in a higher frequency state of being. So what is being offered to us very often is the ultimate solution. Maybe you already have a feeling of what you should be letting go of or choosing to do completely differently in order to access this abundant, vibrant, truly joyous version of yourself. And yet what the ego is projecting from that place of inner wounding is exactly the opposite. Maybe you still feel confined to this paranoia of internal stagnation because you don't actually feel deserving of choosing what is in highest alignment with you, since the nature of the ego can often be simply self-preservation, creating this limitation of who you can really choose to become. If that's the case, let's try to understand why this is, because it's a very complex program that actually has a simple explanation at its core. If the cause for your wounding stems from an experience where somebody put you down or where you didn't receive validation for being this authentic version that you are at your core, then you might still be containing these layers of bitterness, pent-up emotions, resistance, anger, even vengefulness, potentially, towards those that inflicted that feeling of rejection upon you. Because of that, you might now be in a state of internal rebellion against the pain that they created, choosing to do things differently than your authentic beliefs would hold in order to please those others. Maybe you're still choosing to self-reject yourself and to prove those people wrong that did you wrong in the past. And that might feel like you making certain decisions out of a desire to run away from the pain body and to accept yourself only at the level that other people have accepted you in the past. This, of course, is purely conditional acceptance and conditional love. It's not choosing to honor that you know deep down who you are, what you want, and what your deepest needs and feelings would dictate about what you should be doing going forward. And instead, it's honoring what the conditional expectations of those around you are making you feel you're deserving of. So let's say you were actually born into a reality where nobody ever gave you permission or approval to fully love yourself and accept yourself. Then that wounded self within you is holding you hostage to those beliefs. It's making you feel like you actually have no ability to break free from this stereotype that you are unworthy, you are undeserving of true unconditional love, and of choosing those things that break you out of the mental prison and align you with a higher level of success through a value-rich kind of alignment with your higher self. And so if that's the status of things internally, think about the challenge that you're going to be met with externally to you when you try to bring this notion to fruition. Even if you try to create a new life or a new pathway, but you still have that part of you that is in doubt or in denial, you're going to feel like nothing is working out externally to you because you're quite literally bringing those same beliefs of self-denial, doubt, and limitation into your reality, which is going to lead to you being met by resistance and opposition all around you. This then, if you go further down the timeline, is going to lead to a feeling of you completely losing trust in the universe, in your own higher self, and in the possibilities that life can afford you. And this is all because you haven't actually chosen to relinquish the control of your wounded self on you. And you're still allowing the critical egoic narrator to play this very significant role in the creation of your future. So, what can we do about this? First off, we need to acknowledge that if this is the dualistic experience that we're fostering within ourselves, we need to be the ones that create the intervention. We need to recognize that we actually aren't making certain critical decisions that disrupt the dysfunctional pathways that lead us to live our lives in a mode of subservience to this egoic narrator. We might still be neurologically playing out all these fixed outcomes that were embedded in our lives and in our minds in the past. And that's because we aren't actually allowing ourselves to birth a higher level blueprint of who we are and what we want to create going forward. We're still living in a mode where there's like this mental fog orchestrating our reality. A feeling that we don't need to necessarily change ourselves in order to change our reality. But this is built on a fundamental flaw, which is that you can change your life without changing yourself. And of course, that leads to some devastating outcomes if you try to create these elaborate changes outside of you without actually achieving the healing work within. And so this brings us to the topic of quantum jumping, this super appealing notion that we can spontaneously shift states of consciousness, and in the process of doing that, leave our past behind. But what exactly are we leaving behind? If you're just trying to leave certain unwanted circumstances and variables in your life behind, without actually leaving that wounded self behind, you are bringing that trauma into your future. And that's just a recipe for disaster because it's going to end up manifesting even more traumatic circumstances that highlight to you the splits still contained within your inner world. If the circumstances change externally, but not internally, that is going to wreak havoc in your outer reality as well. So to achieve truly lasting change and transformation, we need to first and foremost choose to put a lock on our wounded self in the past and to recognize all of the gifts that the past has offered us, but only if we choose to lock up that wounded imprint of the self that has experienced all that wants to still be confined to the darkness, that wants to feel like a victim, or that wants to be at odds with the experiences that actually seeded the deepest strength, resilience, and inner certainty in who you are deep down. Unless you choose to prescribe the most strength and value to those circumstances, but now to act not through the lens of that pain, but through the love that you can give yourself to transcend it altogether, you're going to deal with that repetitious loophole where you try to escape your pain, but it ends up boomeranging in some shape or form in the new life that you are creating. In essence, this is about shifting timelines completely. It's about choosing to recognize that if your state of consciousness isn't permanently changing, then your life also isn't going to. And to change your state of consciousness, you need to think of yourself now as a fresh slate. Literally looking at yourself as a regenerative substrate of universal consciousness, which changes as soon as you begin to observe a completely new inner reality. Once you can acknowledge yourself from a position of wholeness, rather than this internal divide that you might have experienced in the past, you can recognize that it takes this persistent and devoted effort to aligning with your power, your strength, your decision-making abilities, and your focus in order to bring this most powerful energy into every new moment, which eventually will rewrite those neurological pathways and your energetic body as well, bringing you this strength not only through an intention, which is more of a mental phenomena of grasping an idea or a dream, but not necessarily choosing to make that a reality, because what that requires is alignment at all levels of your conscious experience, not just spiritually or mentally, but also physically and emotionally. So when that wounded self tries to intervene in the creation of alignment, you are ultimately the one that allows it to. You get to ultimately pick up on those signals of fear, constriction, self-doubt, rejection prematurely before they even create these obstacles in your present reality. And you decide whether or not you want to believe in them or not. So imagine what will happen if every single time you feel this energy of your wounded self appearing and attempting to make an entrance in your future state, and you choose to shut the door. You would literally door slam the energy of this wounded, victimized part of you that actually doesn't want to encourage your success and alignment going forward. And you choose to create a new narration. You choose to rewrite the story by literally creating a new framework surrounding what you energetically will entertain as the highest level possibilities going forward. And when that happens, you can experience this breath of fresh air that you also end up providing. Maybe right now you think that in order for these changes to manifest on a more significant level in your life, you need to be blessed by the opportunity from the universe or from a higher level standpoint, which might still make you feel like you need to wait for something to give you the invitation to show up as this most powerful version of yourself. But what if that is a reverse paradox? And in order for you to create this reality that you're dreaming of, you need to start showing up to the situation as if the invitation is already there, thereby bestowing yourself with the invitation to be this transformed version of you. Now that's really the essence of a quantum jump. It's choosing to reflect upon yourself as already a healed version of yourself, not looking at yourself through the lens of your shadow, your pain, your agony, through this abysmal lens of thinking about everything that could go wrong, but instead choosing to see through the light essence of your experience, how more improvement and more alignment with your light aspects will allow you to achieve all that you now feel might be missing. If you allow yourself this power of not just thinking about how you can change your past to change your future, but you simply choose to leave it behind and to look at yourself without corrupting your focus and intentions in the now moment, by allowing for the most freedom and opportunity through newness, through creation, through an expansive energetic focus, where you no longer need to try to change anything and you move into radical acceptance, to now figure out everything that you can be doing to make that higher self a reality right now. Then you start to really close the gap between the now and the future that you want to be experiencing. And the past becomes more or less obsolete. If anything, it's a launch pad or stepping stone that got you here. And then without thinking about any excuses in the past that might still be hindering you, you recognize that all of the karma, all of the trauma, all of the programming that needs to be transmuted is fully accessible in the now moment. And to deal with that, you need to allow yourself to be the agent of transmutation. Let's move into the standpoint of what it means to really transmute energetic programs and to allow for consistent and deep realignment at all levels. So right now, let's say you pick up on any energy that reflects this constriction in your energetic field. You recognize now through the superconscious awareness that you have that therein lies a choice. You can choose to either give in to this complex that moves you into suppression, into self-rejection, into alienating yourself from even the opportunity that you know will lead to a more expansive mode of conscious awareness, or you can choose, on the other hand, to turn in the opposite direction. You can choose to recognize that anything from the past that now feels like a hindrance is really an opportunity to pivot. And that's where you transmute by choosing the opposite experience of that seemingly negative one that arises. Whenever you feel that you don't have the power to choose alignment, or you don't have the ability to let go of doubt and to choose a higher level pathway to achieving this harmony that you seek, what you're giving into in that moment is the impairment of your faith and the impairment of knowing that when you choose differently, you will achieve success. This is purely energetic success that we're talking about, and it will be experienced as soon as you choose not to give in to victim consciousness. So it's very important to recognize the energy of victim consciousness and to immediately recognize that you, upon identifying it, are this energetic alchemist that chooses to reassign value to this energy that you're picking up internally. The opportunities from there are endless. Anytime you feel like you're in despair or you want to give in to the crippling feeling of unworthiness, you can choose to create worthiness and actually rebel against the part of you that doesn't believe in the opportunity to do so. That's where everything ends up being disproven. And you don't need to wait for the universe to give you faith in yourself. You can simply find the faith by believing enough in yourself to change the scenario entirely. And this applies to anything in reality, because this is the nature of the quantum universe. Once you vibrationally entertain a new outcome, these outcomes begin to realign. And literally, You collapse a new wave function of conscious probability by choosing to be a more conscious observer. So when we say choosing to put a lock on your wounded self, what we really are saying is choosing to impart more value on the power of conscious observation in the now moment, not the observation of your past wounded self. Think of how much power ends up being created if instead of giving this ability to your past self stuck in pain, confusion, or loss, you allow yourself to be in this reinvigorated state of entertaining possibilities that begin with this alignment that you can give yourself. All of a sudden, anything seems possible. You can choose to explore all possibilities that right now don't feel aligned with you and sense what can you do internally to allow for that alignment to blossom. You can create new suggestions within your mind, within your heart, and your spirit that bring you into a mode of activating all that currently feels dormant within you. Because as soon as you put a lock on that wounded self, you allow for this energy of vibrancy and powerful possibility to be born internally. A space is created, and within that space, you start to detect everything that previously was unknown to you. The blind spots are unearthed, and all the secret abilities and powers that you've always been holding are no longer concealed, because the wounded self isn't there blocking your awareness from what is most powerful about you. In order to activate that, you need to put all your focus and awareness into excavating everything within you that can be used most powerfully in the now moment to be part of this transformation. And you can't allow any disconnect or any deviation. It's a complete, powerful decision to embody this highest version of you all the time. If I had to take a wild guess, you probably already are feeling certain things in your energy field that bring you a sense of that certainty of alignment. Where you know if you embody a particular thing, you're going to feel like you're confirming the instincts and intentions of your highest self. And that's the energy of true coherence and harmony. When you no longer are masking any pain and you're simply choosing to align with what you already know is in your own best interest, and you ceaselessly give energy to those intentions and those decisions that create a permanence to the experience of that kind of self-love. Once you choose this kind of alignment, you no longer are going to feel like you are this consciousness pendulum swinging from direction to direction, vacillating between feelings of uncertainty, doubt, and then faith and higher probabilities when the circumstances align you with them, because you recognize you are that pendulum. And whenever there is that kind of oscillation between states of being or states of consciousness and mindsets, you know that you're actually the one creating that. And that's simply indicating a lack of consistency within you, which then corresponds to a lack of consistency in those outcomes that you experience going forward. And so if you were to give yourself the ultimate agency and the ultimate right to choose loving alignment and harmonic realignment consistently, then imagine you have the power to do literally anything that now feels more accessible to you by establishing this highest belief system. So put a lock on that wounded self. It doesn't need to rule your life. It isn't you, and it isn't what your higher self wants you to be experiencing as a norm. It's simply a stepping stone. It's an aspect of you that needs to be hugged into a space of being obliterated eventually by the more powerful energy that you are learning has always been within you. And when you choose to embody that, intentions become crystal clear, and there no longer is a divide between your ego and your soul, and you can simply see that all parts of you can be working in this equilibrious fashion to allow for the culmination of all these lessons that have been meant to bring you into your own powerful essence. So may the power be with you, and may you recognize that anything that currently feels out of reach is simply awaiting for you to reach into the future and to become equivalent to that powerful intention.